When I say Cory Schneider to you, what do you immediately think of?
I think of Bo Horvat, to be quite honest.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I think of Roberto Luongo.
That's so funny.
But that's
Two
part
other
of this
people.
conversation that
Yeah.
you're going to hear is he is inextricably linked to his former crease mate here in Vancouver, and also to the current captain of the Vancouver Canucks. You say Horvat, I say Luongo. Why doesn't the good listener tell us what they think? You can text 778-402-9680 to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips?
It's going to be great.
Or email live@sekeresandprice.com. Do you always think of another person with Cory Schneider, or do you think of him on his own right? Our next guest has played 424 and counting NHL games, 108 of them with the Vancouver Canucks. And yes, I am including postseason games because we'll have to talk some postseason games with New York Islanders goaltender, Mr. Cory Schneider, here on Sekeres and Price. Hi, Cory. How you doing?
Good. The New York Islanders part has a weird ring to it.
It does.
I guess it's official, so I'll take it.
Yeah. Well, and truth be told, we were going to do this back in October, and then all of a sudden things went quiet. And then the next thing we know, we saw Cory Schneider signing with the New York Islanders. We know that Lou likes to keep things quiet, so appreciate you checking back with us.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we can make it work. So I'm glad I can jump on with you guys. You know, you got to run things through the right channels with him, and I just want to make sure that this is all above board. So glad to be here with you guys.
We're going to get to what your year has been like a little bit later, but just people do, see that you played recently. What was that one night like, just to get in there and to play as well as you did?
Yeah, it's just been a strange 2 years and change, just with COVID and last season being on the taxi squad and not getting a chance. I backed up, I think 8 or 10 games, something like that, but never got the chance to play. So yeah, I obviously had a rough year. That 19-20 season leading into COVID just didn't get off to a great start, and then things kind of snowballed, and I got obviously waived and sent down. And I was feeling really good about my game in the American League, and they called me back up, and I had a good run of games in Jersey right before the season got shut down. So, I felt good about everything, but you never know what would happen, ending the season there and going into a normal off season. But obviously the pandemic threw everybody in for a loop, myself included. And, coming into that off season, if you want to call it that, leading into the shortened season, I didn't know what my prospects were. So, I got bought out obviously kind of late in the game, and was a free agent for the first time in my life, but not at an opportune time, I don't think. So, it was a difficult time for me because, I felt good about how I played, leading into the pandemic, but, you go 9 months without playing a game, and, I don't know what teams or people thought about me or what my prospects were. I was only 34 at the time. So I was hoping to get some interest, and, I had a few teams kicking the tires, but I think, again, just the unknown with me, the unknown with the season. Nobody really knew what the taxi squad was going to look like, what the rules were going to look like. And, I was sort of trying to suss out my best options here, trying to think of my family. Okay, what do I want to do in COVID? What's going to keep them safest or me closest to them, or, some sense of normalcy. And when Lou called and said, hey, we're looking for you as a number 3, the prospect of, potentially maybe rehabbing my career or having a good season if something happened to either Ilya or Varlamov, and Ilya Sorokin had, just come over from Russia, so he had never played. So obviously there was a bit of an unknown there. So I kind of looked at my options and said, it's a pretty goalie friendly system and team. They defend well. Mitch Korn and Piero Greco, the goalie coach there, have a great track record the last little while. So, it was just a attractive option for me. So just a familiarity with Lou and how he runs things, I thought it'd be a great opportunity. So, I really enjoyed the season. I didn't get to play, obviously, which sort of pushed my career prospects further down the line. But, I think being there and going on that deep playoff run with the Islanders, it just reinvigorates you a little bit. Even if you're not playing, you're part of it. You're practicing. I backed up a couple playoff games, and it kind of gets the juices flowing again. You're like, oh, this is what I remember it to be. So, when I had the chance to come back again this year, I was just looking to play games. I was looking to say, hey, it's not above me to play in the American League. I played parts of, as you guys know, 3 years in Manitoba before I got to Vancouver, and I think it was the best thing for me. It prepared me, and really got me ready to play in the NHL. So I know a lot of people sort of look down at the American League or think, it's a demotion or a punishment, but I hadn't played hockey in a year and a half. So for me, I was like, hey, I just want to play games, whether it's here, elsewhere. It just to almost prove to myself, like, can you still do it? Because I didn't want to think about retirement yet without knowing. If I had retired or hung them up this offseason and not had played a game in almost 2 years, you might have sat there and said, man, could I have done it? Could I have played? And the people, your family, other people put in the time and effort to support your career. You kind of want to do it for them too, just to say like, hey, I just want to make sure that I leave it all out there, that I did everything I could before I hang it up. Because the one thing I did hear from a lot of guys who have retired or have contemplated is, so they always say like, just don't do it too soon, because you can never come back. Once you sort of get in that mindset that you're done, you're not going to play, and you stop playing, it's impossible to come back. So I decided to give it another go, and I've had a lot of fun. I've had a great time in Bridgeport with the guys, a lot of young guys. It's been, again, sort of gets you going again, playing with younger players and bringing that energy. And I felt really good about my game since about, the new year. Because again, I hadn't played in a year and a half. So it took about 4 or 5 games to get that rhythm back. And I felt really good. So I think by the time I got called up and played last week in Jersey, this is a long answer to a short question that you asked. I'm sort of vamping here and just going through all of it. But to get to your question and to answer the thing, it was awesome. It was great because, again, Ilya and Varley are awesome goalies. They're so good and they stay healthy. And that's a great thing. That's a good thing for the Islanders and the organization. And, I'm pretty sure we're the only team in the NHL to have only played 2 goalies for the last 2 seasons. So part of it was just, lack of opportunity. But, was I really ready earlier in the season? Was I ready to play an NHL game not having played before? So I think at this point I was. And to play in Jersey and be in that arena again. They didn't really announce who was starting, I think, before the game. I don't know if that was on purpose. And I came out for warmups, and I think it was like half Islanders fans, half Devils fans at this point. And you kind of heard this awkward kind of like, whoa, like no one really knew what to do, because like the Islanders fans were surprised and the Devils fans were surprised, and my history there. So it was a pretty funny reaction when I skated on the ice for warmups. But it was great. It was awesome to be in the league again and to play an NHL game. And, like I said, I played 400 of them, but I was probably as nervous for this one as I was for my first one in Vancouver back in Calgary, whenever that was, 2009 or 10. So it's good. It's good to get the butterflies and the juices going. And that's why you play. That's why, I kind of stuck it out, and my family, my kids supported me in doing it, because they said, what if you get to play a game? That'd be an amazing experience again. And my son's 6, so he's really figuring things out, and he doesn't remember much about my career. In New Jersey. And so for him, he kept sort of saying like, Dad, when are you going to play for the Islanders? And I'm like, well, I don't know. It's just, you got to wait your turn. You got to get the opportunity. And for him and my wife and my daughter to be able to, my dad and some other people to come watch me play again live. It was a great feeling. You take it for granted, I think, when you're playing and you're in it and you're just going through it. And I think when you have an opportunity like this, you make the most of it. And I just sort of said, hey, look, win or lose, I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of the fact that I'm back here when maybe people thought I wouldn't be. And it's not some great redemption story. Like I've had a great career. I've made plenty of money, so it's not like I'm some underdog who never thought that I could make it. But at this point in my life and my career, I was really happy with the opportunity. So it was a great experience.
27 saves and a 4-3 win. And I read, are you based still there in Short Hills, New Jersey? Were family able to come see the game?
So we do still have the house there. Another player on the Devils is actually renting it from us this year. We stayed there last year during the pandemic, so I was commuting from New Jersey to Long Island most days. Some days just to test, which was a nightmare, but it was just sort of the cost of doing business. And once I figured out I was going to be back with the Islanders, and I was predominantly going to be in Bridgeport. We actually rented closer to Bridgeport this year because I was just last year with the commute, and the year before I commuted to Binghamton a lot, and I was sort of done with it, just not seeing the family enough. So, but they were up the road in Connecticut, so they came down pretty easily, and my dad drove down from Boston, and a couple other people flew in from Maine to come watch, so they were pretty excited. But yeah, it worked out really well because we were sort of in that tri-state swing. We did, Long Island Thursday, Madison Square Friday, and then Jersey Sunday. So, if I got to play any of those games, it was within, driving distance for my family, which was huge because, I could have been in LA or Vancouver for all I knew, and it would have been a lot harder to get people out there to come see. So, that was a bit of a blessing to be able to play in Jersey and have them come so easily.
One of the great mysteries for me, Blake, about the 2011 Canucks is you have a guy from suburban Boston, Marblehead. We're speaking to him. You have a guy from Long Island, Chris Higgins. I used to always say to Higgins, where's the Long Island accent? Cory, where's the New England accent? Not a trace of it when you talk.
Higgins can bring it out when on demand.
No, I know on demand, but he doesn't routinely speak that way.
Well, Higgy's one of my best buddies. We've been really close ever since those years in Vancouver, and we talk all the time and stay in touch and stuff like that. And you get it out of him. When he's at ease and he's not being polished on the radio or talking to the media, he lets the Long Island slip out. I've met his family quite a few times, and it's there. He just he's the Yale educated guy. He learns how to hide it and mask it.
And would he say the same about you? Would he say the same?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm a little below him going to Boston College instead of Yale, so he's kind of got that edge on me. So he might look down at me anyways, down his big nose. He might look down at me. Just kidding. That's a joke we have. So if he's listening or hears this, he'll understand.
Oh yeah.
So it's my dad's originally from Delaware. My mom's from California. So that's the biggest.
That's what's coming through here. Yes.
Right. Yeah. So they both went to grad school in Boston in the 70s and 80s and ended up meeting and, moving to Marblehead in like 1980. So I think the biggest factor is that they didn't have an accent. And, Marblehead's, it's a really nice town. It's, 30 minutes outside of Boston on the water. So you get a mixture of kind of locals who've been there forever, who have a thick, Marblehead accent like that. And then you have other people who just, don't have that. So, I wasn't around it all the time. I didn't grow up with it everywhere. And then my parents at home didn't have it. So people accuse me of having Canadian accent. I come home from Winnipeg or Vancouver in the off season and my buddies would be like, you sound Canadian. I'm like,
sorry.
It's hard not to, it's so easy to listen to. So, but my wife's from Greater Boston and, my family. So we can slide in and out of the Boston accent whenever you want. So just sort of depends on, where you are or what time of night it is. It can come out if you need it to, but for the most part I think I've just again, having spent so much time in Canada, you learn to speak differently or you hear things differently and it just kind of goes away, but I never really had it to start with. So although I am a proud Bostonian, I don't have the accent per se, but I can if I need to.
Phillips Academy, high school hockey, and as far as I'm concerned, and Higgins may remind you of this, accepted to Harvard and Cornell, I read, but chose high school hockey and then chose Boston College. Cory, why?
Well, to be fair, I never actually got accepted to Harvard and Cornell. I was recruited by them, but I had enough interest in BC very early on in the process that I had committed to them before I even started the application process. So, education was really important to me. My father, was both my parents, my mother and my father were big on education. They both went to graduate school. My dad went to Cornell undergrad and then Harvard Business School, and my mom was in Southern California growing up and then came to Lesley College in Boston to get her master's in education. So for me growing up, hockey was more of a luxury. They kind of said like, hey, we love that you're playing hockey, but like, unless you get good grades and work hard, you don't get to play hockey. So that was kind of the carrot for me. It wasn't the primary goal. So they instilled that in me at a young age, and even going to Phillips Academy, which for people who don't know is a very, very prestigious academic prep school in Boston. Presidents Bush and his father, the older Bush, both went there, like things like that. So, but that's not really my style. Like I'm not a preppy kid at heart in that way. I've obviously been very blessed to have a fortunate upbringing and having, great parents who supported me and did well financially. So, I had that advantage obviously, but, I went to my public high school my freshman year and playing, hockey in the Boston area with other kids who were really good. They all went to private school. So it was kind of like, if you're going to take the next step, you either have to go to juniors, USHL, major junior, something like that, or prep school at the time, which back then was actually pretty fruitful for hockey players. And I applied to a couple schools and I got into Andover and I didn't really want to go. Like, honest to God, I loved being home. All my buddies were there. I was kind of shy back then. I wasn't very confident in myself. And I got into Phillips Andover. It was kind of a big deal, but I also was just like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to go. And my dad and my mom sat me down, literally. And my dad's like, Cory, I got to write a check tomorrow one way or another if you're going. Like, are you going? And I was like, and he was kind of like, you have to go. And I was like, fair enough. You're right. So I begrudgingly went. And, it ended up, it was hard. It was extremely difficult academically. It was a challenge for me, but at the time it was one of those things that you kind of hated or resented at the time. But then as soon as you left, you're like, man, that was actually really good for me. But I think going to Andover, it opened up opportunities at places like Harvard and Cornell. They automatically looked at you and said, hey, this is a kid who, if he's going to Andover, he can probably get in here, so we can recruit him aggressively and see if he wants to come. And, I visited Cornell, I visited Harvard, I visited BC, and, my dad was obviously partial to Cornell and Harvard since he went to both those places. But at the end of the day, I felt the most comfortable at BC. It felt like a great mix of good academics, great, potentially great academics, a great hockey team I wanted to play, in the Hockey East, in the Beanpot, playing big games, things like that. And no disrespect to Cornell and Harvard, they were in those environments, but I think at that time, BC was regularly, in the mix to win national championships. Like, they were a powerhouse. And that was a big draw to me, because I said, if I'm going to play in the NHL, I need to prepare myself and be in these moments and be in a program that, produces NHLers. And to me, Boston College was that. So, and it was great. I couldn't be more happy with my decision. I left school early to sign with Vancouver, but I came back and finished all the classes I needed to within a couple of years to get my degree. I couldn't be more thrilled with having gone to Boston College and making that decision. But, at the time it was hard. My dad was like, what you're saying no to right now? I was like, yeah, I understand. He's like, all right, well, I trust you, and just work hard and make the most of it. And I tried to. So hopefully, it was the right choice. But I've never been one to look back at decisions and second guess. I just kind of make the decision and go forward, because you can waste a lot of time and energy thinking about what if. So it all worked out for me in the best way I could imagine. So I'm really happy with it.
Those Boston schools are renowned for producing National Hockey Leaguers. Your years were no different, of course. The thing that jumps out for me is the size of your teams, and I mean that both in the big and the small. You've played with some Shannon, Giunta, and Gerby, Steven Giunta. Tiny players on the relative scale. And then you played with guys like Andrew Alberts and Brian Boyle as well. I mean, you had the little speedsters, you had some heavier guys, some nice teams there.
Yeah, I think that was the great thing about, Jerry York, who coaches BC and the program there, is that, it was back when, guys weren't looking to be one and done. I think right now, the emphasis is fast tracking the NHL, like how quickly can I get to the NHL? So the guys are good enough, they can do it, and it makes sense. You go for a year and you're ready to go. But I think back then it was more guys stayed for 2 or 3 years at minimum, and then they left. So you could get those small guys, those Giantas and Gerbys and guys, Ryan Shannons and Chris Collinses, who might have been overlooked from an NHL standpoint, but were terrific hockey players. Like, as we now know, like unbelievable players and good NHLers and things like that. And Jerry did a great job of finding those guys, the guys who said, all right, these guys are going to be here for 3 or 4 years, and they're going to be really good college players, and they'll have a chance to play at the next level. And they did. But at the same time, because, BC is a bit of a, blue chip program, like they get highly recruited kids and guys who are first rounders and things like that. You're able to get those prototypical NHL guys, like the Andrew Alberts and the Brian Boyles and, in future years, Chris Kreiders, things like that, guys who had that size and that NHL teams like. So, it was a pretty funny dynamic. It was great having, Bry's one of my best friends, and he's 6'7", and I have a couple other guys, the Gerbs and another kid who was a walk-on who was 5'5", and they stand next to each other on the ice, and it was like a father-son skate, and we'd always laugh about it and joke about it. But I think that's what made us a good team and hard to play against, is we had size and physicality and power, and then we had these little guys you just couldn't catch up to on the ice. They just skate around you.
What was your Beanpot record those 3 years?
Oh, I don't want to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, BU, I think, beat me every year in the Beanpot, whether it was in the finals or the first round. So I was a big gopher in the Beanpot. But, I'd like to think that at the end of the season, when it came to Hockey Easts and Frozen Fours, that,
there you go.
Mm-hmm.
we were the ones standing. So I'd rather win in, April than, even though I didn't win a national championship.
Some kitschy tournament,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Some made-up tournament.
Yeah, the Beanpot matters until you don't win it. Then it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
exactly.
So you signed with the Canucks. You're assigned to the Manitoba Moose. And lest we forget, Winnipeg was not an NHL market at the time, although the team was supported like one. And boy, are the Moose really revving at that point. They had developed guys like Bieksa and Burrows and Raymond and Hansen. You had, Mike Keenan has 1,100 games playing left wing there. for the Moose, and you'd get dropped into that environment with head coach Scott Arniel, who's a pretty tough guy, as we came to learn. And there's a seminal moment where coach calls you out, Corey. Like for the first time in your life, right? You get called out. Tell us the story.
Yeah, there's a couple stories that go into that whole process. First of all, I was the last draft before the big lockout in 04. So we fell under the old CBA rules where rookies signing bonuses were, 1.2 million or something like that, So by the time it came out of that, they got rolled back 24%. So it was still a lot of money. It was like $800,000 for signing bonus. And if I had stayed through my senior year and become a free agent, I would lose that. I'd go to the new rules where the signing bonus was like $200,000. So after my junior year, like, again, same thing. I'm kind of like, I was still sort of shy or unsure of myself at that point. And, I'm talking to my agent and he's like, so, we're leaving school. And I'm like, are we? Yeah, I kind of like it here, like a senior year, it could be fun. Like I'm having a great time. And, Coach York tried to convince, as he should have, say, hey, we'd love to have you for senior year. Like Roberto's there. If you sign with them, it's going to be hard to play. Like you should become a free agent and pick where you want to go because it's going to be tough to get in behind Roberto. And he wasn't wrong. But at the end of the day, I was also like, I felt I was ready. First of all, I was like, hey, I've done 3 years of college. I've had 2 really good years. I feel like I'm ready for the next step. That was the biggest part of it. But the other part was like, it's a lot of money I'd be giving up. At that stage of my life and career, you're a 21-year-old kid. You don't know if you're going to make it. It's like, that's a big chunk of change. So I was like, I kind of have to kind of do this. And the other part was, again, I wasn't sure I wanted to leave. Like I did, but I didn't. And, I talked to my agent and he's like, well, if they give you the cap, will you leave? Like meaning give you the full amount because they would try to talk you down on the bonus. Like we'll give you 500. No, I want the cap, which is 800. You'd go back and forth. And he's like, if they give you the cap, will you leave? And I was like, yeah, sure. What the heck, whatever. And so he came back to me a day later. And he said, yeah, they're going to give you the cap. So you ready to sign? And I was like, ooh, they did, huh? They're really going to give me the cap, are they? So they kind of like put me in a position there where I was like, all right, well, I guess we have to sign. And as an educated guy, I'd like to think I knew nothing about Winnipeg. I had no clue about Winnipeg. I didn't know where it was. It was a little daunting to me because I was like, I'm leaving, my senior year of college with my friends and my comfort, and I'm going to Winnipeg to play hockey. I'm like, what am I doing? But once I got there, I was quickly, realized how cool of a hockey town it was. Like you said, they ran it like an NHL organization between the arena and, Mark Chipman and Craig Heisinger, who ran the team, were unbelievable. And I don't think I realized how good I had it in the American League when I got there. And you quickly do realize how good you have it. But, yeah, and Arnie was there and he was my first like real coach. Not to say that Jerry York wasn't, but college is just a different animal than pros. College, you're recruiting, it's a different way you go about things. And at the pro level, they just expect results. They don't care as much about, where you came from, what you've done, what you are, they're just there just to see you play well. And yeah, the first half of the year, I struggled mightily. I just, I thought I could do what I did in college and get away with it. And I, found out rudely that it's not the case. You got to train differently. You have to prepare differently. You have to live differently. And it's caught me off guard for the first couple of months, which it does, I'm sure, for a lot of people. But as a first round pick and a goalie, I think there's that added pressure that goes into that. And I think I want to say Roberto might have been hurt, and they'd called Drew McIntyre up. He was my goalie partner, and I didn't get the call, obviously, because I just clearly wasn't ready. And I'd had a bad game the night before, and we had a back-to-back, and Arnie sort of called me into his office and just said, hey, look, I'm going to play you again tonight. I don't want to because you don't deserve it. But, like, you need to figure your shit out. Like, you need to get your head on straight and learn how to be a pro and start playing well. Because what I've seen so far is, like, you're not ready. Like, and he sort of read me the riot act. And like you said, he kind of left me alone at that point because I was a rookie, young guy, goalie, trying to, some coaches are sort of nervous about messing their goalies up. So he hadn't really said a whole lot to me. But he said it all in that meeting. And I think I came out that night and played as hard as I could. And I believe we won 3-2. And, from that moment, I sort of went on a run in the second half of the season and played, the best hockey I'd played. And I think took over the net heading in the playoffs. But, Arnie, like I said, was a real big moment for me just to make me realize, like, hey, you haven't accomplished anything. You've done nothing just because you're a first round pick. And he's like, that's half the reason you're still here. It's because you are a first rounder. Otherwise, we would have sent you to the coast and you'd be down there and learning how to play or whatever. Um, so it was an eye-opening moment, and those are the moments. Not everyone gets an opportunity like that to kind of straighten it up, but when you do, you have to take advantage of it. And fortunately, I think I was able to do that, and it kind of led me on the path that I went on. But I have a great amount of respect for Coach Arneal, and we've stayed in touch. He's been very, Columbus and Washington and, the Rangers, other places. So I've run into him throughout the years, and, we don't stay in touch frequently, but, we'll always say hi to each other and kind of catch up and, talk more as peers now, but he's always been great to me. And again, he did what he had to do. And as a player, sometimes you can take it the wrong way or you can take it the right way. And I think fortunately I took it the best way I could and turned it into, some results, which was encouraging.
By September 2009, you're an established AHL goaltender, and the Canucks go out and sign their starter to a 12-year deal. Oh, and by the way, bring in Andrew Raycroft, who was an established NHL goaltender himself. Yeah. Where are you about your future with Vancouver in that moment, Corey?
Well, I think that story starts in 2006 when they traded for Roberto, and I was a huge fan of Roberto at that point in Florida. Like, I had his posters when I was a kid. Like, he was still good in Florida. He was one of my favorite goalies. And at the draft, I think he got traded to Vancouver, I believe, right? I think I was watching the draft with some buddies just randomly because I like hockey, and I saw the trade was announced, and I was texting my agent. I go, so what does this mean for me? And I think they immediately signed him to that. It was like a 4-year, $6 million deal or something like that. And coming out of the lockout, that was a lot of money at the time. Like, guys weren't making that much usually coming out of the 2004 lockout. So I kind of texted my agent. I go, hey, so what does this mean for me? And he just goes, well, think of it this way. At least starting goalies are making $6 million again. So
he pushed the file in some way.
Completely sidestepped the question, spun it in only the way he could. And I sort of was like, I guess that's good. I don't know. Like, I'm not sure what that means for me, but yeah, I mean, it was, I didn't know what to think, to be honest. I still was trying to make it. I was still trying to get to the NHL. I wasn't too concerned about, becoming a starting goalie. I was sort of saying, all right, I got to figure things out in the American League and play well and earn, climb the ladder and get there. And, let's see where the chips fall. And, but coming to that training camp, I'd had a really good season in 08. We led the league in points. I think I won the best goalie award in the American League. We got to the Calder Cup finals and lost in 6 games. And I felt like, all right, that was my season. Like, I proved that I can do it. I proved that I belong at the next level. Like, let's go. And I came to camp, and they brought in Razor, and who's an awesome guy, by the way, who I still see around. He lives around Boston and actually works with my goalie school that I work with in Boston. So I still see him to this day. But they did what any team did. They insulated themselves against the young guy by bringing a veteran and just saying, like, hey, can this kid, outplay him and win the backup job? And I wouldn't say I came in like cocky. I wasn't arrogant. I wasn't like renting a place in Vancouver, getting ready to go. But I sort of felt like, all right, I've proven myself in Manitoba. Like, what else do I need to do? And I played okay. I was okay in training camp, and that's not bad. But I think they were looking for me to be great and outplay Razor and just like make it clear that I belong there. And I didn't do that. And they sent me down, and I wasn't bitter, but I was sort of kind of just like confused. I was like, man, I thought I'd earned it. I thought I'd be there. Like, yeah, I know it wasn't great in camp, but like, you just got to work through it and I'll be okay. And it ended up actually being really good for me because I played 60 games in the American League, which, I'd never done. I never had that workload. We weren't as good as the year before. We lost a lot of guys because we kind of went for it that year for the Cup. And we lost a lot of those guys. So we weren't quite as good. So I had a lot more volume, a lot more shots, chances, things like that. And I actually think it really worked out for me and paid dividends to get that experience because, as a starting goalie, you got to play about 60 games. So, to have that under my belt and just see more repetitions and situations and scenarios, it was invaluable for me. So once again, it was kind of like my analogy to boarding school earlier. You kind of hate it at the moment, but once you go through it and you do it, you sort of realize like, oh, I guess that was actually really good for me and what was best for my career. So Again, it's a situation that you can take the wrong way or turn into a negative, but if you're able to just embrace it and use it as motivation or turn into a positive, I think it does a lot more for you than the alternative. So again, wasn't happy about it at the time, but in retrospect, it was definitely the right decision and the right thing for me in my career.
10 years later, the Canucks went through it again. I remember us having a conversation with Thatcher Demko's dad about what was going to happen with Markstrom going into the final year. And they were very zen about it. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. When you're the family of the younger guy, you got no power, so you just let it roll out. And they did the opposite in a different management group. But you wonder if it colored ownership's decision of, we went with the older guy last time, let's go with the younger guy this time.
Hey, that pipeline from Boston College to the Canucks crease. You ascend. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, you also didn't let that color your relationship with Luongo. Like, you guys got along famously, at least to our eyes. Describe again what that was like, considering the dynamic, how you guys were able to just, be yourselves around each other.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty easy with Lou. Like, he's an intense competitor. Like, he competes like hell and he wants to win and work, and he's just an animal. And, so, you got to come in with some deference and respect. I came in that next year, 2010, that training camp, and I signed a one-way, so I sort of knew I was going to be there, which was great. And I was confident in my abilities, but you also have to understand the situation. You can't come in there guns blazing like you're a 10-year veteran and that you're just going to, be the guy when Roberto's there. Like, he's the guy, rightfully so. He'd earned it. One of the best goalies in NHL history. So, you have to come in there and just understand, like, it's his crease, and I'm just here to, do what I can to ease his load, to step up if he gets hurt, to, compliment him in whatever way I can, and just to learn from him. Just, the old adage for rookies is, you're seen but not heard. Observe, take in what you can, and don't say a whole lot, because you don't know what you're talking about most of the time. At least that's when it was like when I came in the league, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know him that well. I'd met him a few times, but, like, again, as a young guy coming to the league, like, he's a legend. Like, he is, Roberto Luongo. And, he quickly disabused me of any notion that he was going to be an a-hole or be arrogant or, treat me like, a piece of crap. Like, he was awesome. He was great. And I actually think he enjoyed it. I think he liked having, a partner who they could trust to play and give him some rest and give him some nights off. I think he understood that plan and how beneficial it was. And, I just think we worked really well. Like, we pushed each other. I saw how hard he worked, and I was like, God, I got to keep up with this guy. Like, I got to work just as hard as he does. Like, and for a guy who played as much as he had and had as much success, to see his work ethic and how he attacked every practice and every goalie session, it became fun. It became a challenge and a competition in a good way. And, again, he like, I saw him, I think his last season in Florida when he was 39 or 40, and he's still morning skating on an optional day, like playing that night, he's going out for the morning skate. And I learned that from him, when I got traded to Jersey, and I think I played like 69 games one year. I could not morning skate for the first half of the season just because I was so used to it. It's like, this is what you do, right? Like, this is how you go about it. And eventually my goalie coach had to be like, hey, you can take the morning off if you want. I was like, no, I can't. I have to skate. So it took me a little while to, like, get that out of my system, because I think Lou had kind of ingrained that in me. That it's just like, you see the puck, you got to feel it, you got to work. And not that's good or bad. Everyone's to each their own at this point, especially now. But yeah, being in that environment too, I think he insulated me a little bit. He took all the heat. He was the guy. He was the captain. He had made all the, signed the big contract, and he had all the weight of the city and the franchise on his shoulders. And I think that kind of freed me up to sort of not fly under the radar, but just develop at my own pace, like play 20, 25 games, get a taste for it, feel confident that, hey, I think what people don't realize that the hardest part about being a starting goalie, if you don't have another guy with you, is you don't have that safety net. That if I have an off night or two, or if I get hurt, there's somebody there who can come in and carry the mail, and we'll be okay. Because that's where a lot of the pressure comes from, is you're like, man, if I don't pitch a shutout tonight, or if I get hurt, or if I don't play well, like, we're effed, like, we're in one. And that's a lot to carry as a goalie. And that's one of the underrated hardest things. And when you have tandems or two guys you trust, or a backup that you can rely on, it honestly makes it, I think, a little bit easier to sort of say, like, all right, I can take a night off and just, like, relax, just, like, turn my brain off. He'll be fine. I don't have to get my, gear on, or I don't have to, like, get going in the second period because he's given up 6 goals on 20 shots and go in and finish the game, right? So I think, I'd like to think that I was able to provide that for him, where he was able to, be comfortable and trust me when I played, that, he could really rest and relax and come back and be ready. And they laid it out for us pretty well. All right, Roberto, you're going to play here. You're going to play here. Schneider, you're going to get this game. And that, I think, having that schedule, I think, helps as well. So, again, he has a great sense of humor. We like the same things. We're similar in a lot of ways, but also different in others. And as everyone's come to know, like, he's got a great sense of humor and personality via Twitter and all that kind of stuff. So that's the guy you saw in the locker room every day. So I think I was just really fortunate actually to come in the league and have a guy like that ahead of me to learn from and play behind, as opposed to maybe, having a guy who was a little more acrimonious or didn't appreciate what you were trying to do or was threatened by you.
Like who, Cory? Name names.
I was going to say, I'll do Barney.
No. I mean, hey, I always say, like, I got to play behind 2 Hall of Fame goalies, like first balloters to start my career, and not many people get to say that. So I was pretty fortunate in that regard. Again, maybe my starting goalie career started a little bit later than it could have or should have, but that's just how it goes, and you can't really control the situation you're in, and you just try to look for the positives and learn what you can. And I learned from 2 of the best goalies who've ever played the game, and there aren't many guys who get to say that. So I think it did help me in the long run and made me a better goalie.
Well, pick up on that, Cory, because I think a lot of people listening would sit there and look at it and go, boy, if he hadn't spent those 3 years at BC, if he hadn't been, on the slow rise to the NHL because Luongo is there and he's marinating in the NHL, if he doesn't get traded and have to play behind a legend, Cory Schneider may have way more starts, games in the NHL, more accolades, more wins, more money, and all of that. Do you ever look back and say, boy, 424 games, but it could have been so many more if not for certain effects, some of them totally outside of your control?
Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways. And like I said earlier on, I don't look back and regret a lot of things. I really don't try to, rehash or relive or relitigate what's happened in the past, because I don't think it does you a whole lot of good. I think on the other side of that, if you'd asked me when I got drafted, hey, you're going to have a 15-year pro career, you're going to play 400 games in the NHL, you're going to meet some of the most amazing teammates and staff and people and have the most incredible experiences that you've ever had in your life. Like, would you take that? You'd say, hell yeah, I would. Like, absolutely. But that's not to settle either. As a competitor and as a person who, reached the top and the pinnacle of their profession, like, you want that opportunity to win a Stanley Cup and be the best. And, again, everyone's path is different. You can't sort of say what if or well if, what if I came up on a team that was terrible and they threw me in at 21 and I wasn't ready and I flamed out in 3 years, like, there's also a flip side to it. I try not to rehash what could have been. I've heard or read some things like, oh, it's really sad to see what happened to him and his career, and like, oh, what could have been. And I sort of sit there and I'm like, you know what, like, what's going on in the world is sad. Like, what's happening in Ukraine is sad. Like, COVID was sad. Like, the thing people are dealing with every day, like that stuff's tragic and sad. Like I said, I've had a 15-year career. I've made more money than I ever could have imagined playing hockey for a living. Don't feel bad for me. Like, I'm fine. Like, I'm very content and happy with how my career went. And yeah, could there have been more? Could there have been other things that happened? Could I have won a Stanley Cup? Like, sure. And that would have been awesome. That would have been like icing on the cake and the ultimate like achievement and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, like, I'm just super grateful that I've been able to play this game for so long and have a modicum of success. And like I said, just experience the things that so many kids dream of experiencing that never get that opportunity. So
good perspective.
Yeah.
Good perspective.
Yeah. Maybe that's me at 36 saying that as opposed to 26, but that's just how I look back at it now. And I have no regrets. If I'd won a cup in 2011 with the Canucks as a backup, would that have validated my career? I don't know. I didn't play a whole lot. Like, did I earn that Stanley Cup? Would that have made my career whole? Like, I don't think so. Like, it would have been great. It would have been awesome. Like, I would have loved every second of it. But like, would that have changed where I am now at age 36? Like, I don't know if it would have. So, I try to look at it that way.
You're so linked to Bo Horvat in fans' minds, but of course, Bo Horvat's nobody to you because you never played alongside. Have you ever met Bo? Have you ever
Not really, no. I've like walked past him, or I've briefly said hey to him. Just obviously knowing the connection, he knows me for sure. Obviously, just not knows me personally, but just knows like the association. But no, I've never really had a full conversation with him. I've never really met him. I've heard great things about him. I've heard he's obviously the
You guys have got
captain.
that in common. You guys have got
Yeah,
that in common.
and he's at a young age. He took on the captaincy in Vancouver, which is never easy, and he's performed. He's played really well, and he's been a great player for them. So again, if things have worked out differently, and I think the first couple of years the trade was great, for both sides. I was playing really well in New Jersey and living up my end of the bargain, and he was a young guy who Vancouver desperately needed while they were doing what they were doing. And I think early on it was a win-win, and things happen, things change, and I can't control that. It's not, I didn't ask to be traded. I didn't ask to have, Bo Horvat go the other way for me. And it's just, I'm not going to lose too much sleep about that. It's not something that I had any control over. So what's the point of sort of comparing myself to him or worrying about what he's doing? I'm sure he's the same way, like he's got his own career to worry about, and he doesn't probably give a damn what I'm doing in New Jersey. It's just, he probably thinks he's like, who? That old guy in New Jersey? No,
I don't know. Well, put it this way: if they are to win a cup out here, he's going to get it first, and you can tell your son, Daddy was traded for him.
That's right. That's right.
Before we leave thing one and thing two, though, because Blake and I owe you a huge thank you. Like, we're doing radio, we're new in our partnership, and from Game 6 of 2011 in the Chicago series, the cramp game where you start at the Madhouse on Madison, through the next 2 years, including in both playoff series against LA and San Jose, like, it is a daily question who is starting in goal, and to answer AV's, great line, who gives them the best chance to win.
Yeah, very Bill Belichickian.
Well, yeah. What was it like being in the middle of that for a couple of years? Because the whole city's hockey fascination is who's going to be the goaltender tonight.
Sure.
Knowing you're probably going to get great goaltending. It's a
great choice. Yeah.
Who's going to be the goaltender, and who is ultimately going to be the choice here to go forward?
Well, you guys are welcome. Being from Boston and knowing how sports mad Boston is and sports talk radio, they'll take something and they will grab onto it and they will hang on like grim death if they can, because it gives you a lot of content. So I applaud you guys for making the most of that, because it was compelling. Even as being a part of it, looking at it as an outsider, it was compelling. It was, at a time where the team was as good as it's ever been in a city where people, live and breathe hockey. And you had Roberto, who's, the first ballot Hall of Famer, in my opinion, and the best, goalie in the team's history. And then you got a young guy who's knocking at the door, and it's a good problem to have. And, I always found it funny, again, being on the inside, it's like, we're all rooting for the same team, right? We all want the Canucks to win. So whether I win or Roberto wins, we all win, right? But it sort of seemed like, people pick sides, or they chose one side or the other. And it was kind of like, well, that's not, yeah, I guess. But at the end of the day, you want the team to win. So who cares who wins? That was sort of.
Did you feel the room was doing that, Corey, or just us on the outside? Was there any of that seeped into the room? Did you feel like the guys were sitting there going?
I mean, I never felt any of it. I mean, Roberto had been with those guys for so long and built up so much equity with them that I think, they trusted him, implicitly. Just they had a ton of faith in him. And but at the same time, that's part of my job, and part of my challenge was to earn their trust. I'm walking into a situation where this group's been together for a long time. They know what they're doing. Hey kid, can you stand the heat? Can you play well when we need you to? And that was my biggest challenge, was to endear myself to my teammates and sort of say, hey, I belong here and you guys can trust me. And I think they did. I think eventually they sort of realized that, either guy was going to give them a great chance to win. And that's a good problem to have. I know sometimes it can turn into a problem, but and AV did what I give him credit too. It's a hard situation. It's how do you tell Roberto that you're not playing in a playoff game? It's a tough thing to do. So he handled it as best he could. He didn't talk to us all the time. It wasn't like he was constantly in our ears being like, hey, AV, as was sort of a man of few words when it came to situations, and he told you what he thought and felt when he had to. And I didn't know what to make of it at the time. I was more worried about playing and winning and doing what I could to succeed. I wasn't, if it was me, you call my number, hey, I'm ready to go. If it's Roberto, I feel just as good about him in there. And if he needs me to come in for whatever reason, I'll be ready. And so again, I think that aspect of it was definitely played up more by the media or the public or whoever. And again, that's what you guys do. It's your jobs, it's fans' jobs. This is the stuff. That's what being a fan's about. It's second guessing and micro dissecting decisions and, so I always joke that, my Q rating in Vancouver must be higher still than it is in Jersey or ever was in Jersey. People always come up to me in Vancouver still. I'm like, oh, if we played you this game, we would have won. Oh, we love you here. You were great. And it's like, well, yeah, it was easy to do when you had 3 years there and, you don't stay long enough for everyone to hate you. So, I always have good experiences when I go back there and people always are very, very nice to me and friendly to me. And, so again, back to the original question, it just, we were both ready to play. And, I'm sure it was probably harder on Roberto than it was on me because I'm still trying to establish myself and earn the net and take over and become a starting goalie. And, he's a guy who's been doing it for a decade. And now he's sort of being called into question or being told that, you're not going to play tonight as a guy who always plays. Like, that's probably a harder thing to come to terms with. So I'm sure he would have an interesting perspective on that. But
Cory, do you remember Alain telling you you're starting Game 6 here in Chicago?
I sure do. Yeah, it was in the conference room at the hotel in Chicago, and again, not that I wasn't ready. I just was like, hey, Roberto's the guy. Like, unless something catastrophic happens, like I'll be ready to go. But he's going to play, and he came off those 2 rough outings in 4 and 5, and going to Chicago, maybe he called us into a room together, and I was sort of like, it's like being called to the principal's office. You're kind of like, what the hell? Like, what's going on here? Am I in trouble? And he sat us both down face to face like a man, and just said, Schneider is going to play tomorrow. And it was pretty short and pretty simple, but he did it the right way. He told us both to our faces and didn't, play games or mislead one or the other. And he was very direct about it. And,
do you get butterflies? Like, you're standing next to him.
Oh,
Do
yeah.
you get butterflies?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a nerve-wracking scenario. He's an intimidating presence at that. I was 24, 23, whatever. And, Roberto's next to me, and I'm sort of like the odd duck in there, kind of like, all right. But, I was excited too. I was thrilled. Like, I felt really good all year and about how I've been playing. And, who wouldn't want to play like a clinching game in Chicago in that building? So maybe I was a little too excited because I ended up cramping up at the end of Game 6. So I think I was a little maybe too excited, but I was thrilled for the opportunity. It's kind of what you dream about, playing the playoffs and in that atmosphere, in that environment. It was a blast until I had to leave the game, unfortunately. But I'll never
was he
forget
supportive,
that
Cory? Was he immediately supportive, or did he need a minute to let that?
You know what? If he did, he never let on to me. He instantly was just like, "You got this, man. Like, you'll be fine. Like, you'll be great. Just do you play your game? Like, we'll be fine. We're gonna win this thing." So, if he did have any other thoughts, he didn't tell me. So that was another great thing about him, is he never let his ego get in front of what was best for the team or what the decision was, or even if he disagreed with it. Maybe he didn't think that was best for the team, but he never let on to that. And that's the other part about him that I hadn't mentioned, is that he was so great when I ended up playing or played over him, or things towards the end started shifting towards me, and he was just tremendous in that regard. So I can't say enough about him as a teammate in that sense.
This is usually the time in the interview where we ask you, what are you up to now? Catch us up. But of course, we know that. Let me ask this. Are you going to keep playing? Do you still want to keep playing, or is this it for Cory Schneider?
I don't know. It's a good question. That's something, the season's winding down here in Bridgeport, and, who knows with the Island if something's going to happen to somebody down the stretch here. But, yeah, it's a good question. It's something I've started to think about. You get focused on the season and playing. But, again, I'm 36. I got 2 young kids. We're kind of settled finally. We've moved around a lot the last couple of years, and they're in school making friends. And, you sort of have to sit there and think about, like, what's best for my family. Like, what, my wife's kind of put her life on hold for the last 12 years to allow me to pursue my dream and do what I love doing and am good at. At what point do you sort of say, okay, like, do I need to grind out another year for my sake, or do I need to attend to my family and do what's best for them? And they've been so supportive of me this entire time. And but your priorities change as you get older. Things are different. You look at things differently. You feel differently. I don't want to be the guy that just hangs on to hang on. Like, I love hockey. It's a lot of fun, and I enjoy playing it. But, like, your body reacts differently to playing, and you have aches and pains you didn't have before. So, it's almost, do I have the energy and the commitment to do the work in the off season to get my body right to play another season? And then it's, do I have a chance to play in the NHL? I might not. It's a two-way street. Somebody has to want you in order to play. So I'm not, so arrogant to think that, like, teams will be lining up at my door come July, whatever, to sign me to a contract. So it's a bunch of variables that I got to sit down and think about and talk with my wife and kids and sort of say what's best for us right now, because what's best for me might not be best for them, or vice versa. So I'm at a point in my life where like I said, I'm very content and happy with how my career's gone. And, I think this year was important for me to just find out if I can still play, and not walk away too soon. But then now that I've done that, I think to my satisfaction, when do you hang on too long and start, putting yourself in front of what else is important in your life? So it's going to be a conversation, and, either way, I just, like I said, I keep saying it, but I won't look back and regret my decision one way or the other, and you'll just move forward and do it to the best of your ability.
We're not rushing you to take your time, but when it is time to cut, we're the retirement show. Dan Hamhuis retired on our show a year or two ago.
Okay.
So you do have to give us a call. Let us know.
I never knew Hammer retired. I just assumed he was still playing somewhere.
Yeah, he is that kind of guy. Yeah.
I don't think Dan knew he was retiring. We joined him. We asked him, Dan, you going to play anymore?
Totally felt spontaneous.
No,
I'm done.
I'm not.
Your 2011 team, though, I mean, the Twins are in management, Louis in management, Burr's coaching. We do this at the time. We fashioned you guys a pretty smart group. Is that going to be your calling whenever you do say you're done? Can you see yourself in hockey after this?
No, I'm going straight to the media with Kevin and just going to bullshit with him.
Please do.
That seems like way more fun.
Yeah.
No, again, that's the other. Okay, I'm going to walk away from hockey, but now what? Like, is it something where I step back for a couple of years and just be a dad and a husband and allow my wife to pursue what she wants to pursue? Or, do I continue on and do something different? And, I'm confident in, my abilities and my background and my connections that I could, figure out what I want to do. I love hockey. I love, watching it, talking about it, thinking about it. But it's not all I do. I have a lot of other interests and things I'm good at and things that would be intriguing to pursue. And again, I'm blessed to be in a financial position where I don't have to do anything. I don't have to get a job the day I retire to sustain, taking care of my family and my lifestyle. So that's a huge blessing and bonus. And but yeah, I mean, I do love coaching, but man, that stuff seems stressful, man. I see all these coaches going gray at 40, like putting on weight. I'm like, man, that seems like a hard way to earn a living. Like, as much fun as it would be, it's tough, and you're gone more than you are as a player because you're spending more time at the rink in the office. You're getting paid a fraction of what you get paid as a player. Well, for some people, but not all. But so I do like the management side. I think it's interesting. I don't know what I would do or what I would consider. But again, it kind of goes back to my, if I'm going to play or not. The same thing. Like, doesn't make sense for my family. Doesn't make sense where we are, where we're at. My schedule. Like, I'm not going to quit playing hockey because I've been gone so much just to go take a job where I'm gone a lot. That's not something I'm very interested in. So, I'm like I said, I'm lucky. I think I can take my time, maybe take a year off and just sort of see how I feel, see what gets me going, see what inspires me, intrigues me. And, if something comes along that makes sense, then yeah, I mean, I could see myself being in hockey in some capacity. I don't know if I can keep up with Lou and his 15 fantasy lineups that he manages every day that I think really groomed him to be a general manager type. Like, he's been grooming for this since day one. And I don't know if I can think the game like Hank and Danny can, because it just made complete sense to them all the time. So, but yeah, like I said, I feel comfortable enough with people I've met, relationships I've developed that, if I was interested, I could reach out and, see what's out there. But I think at this point, again, have to decide if I'm going to play or not. And then after that, I think just do what's best, for my lifestyle, my family, and what makes sense, because it is a demanding lifestyle. It comes with a lot of perks and a lot of amazing experiences and incredible things. But, it sucks to miss your daughter's first dance, or to miss your son's first T-ball game, or to, not be there with your wife when things are, not great or something's going on. And, those are hard things to miss. And again, I think as you get older, your priorities change and shift, and you have to factor all that in. And I think that's, I'll consider all that heavily. But yeah, again, another long answer to a short question. It would be interesting to see what's out there, what opportunities might arise in hockey if if and when I do stop playing.
Well, I have a feeling whatever you choose, you'll be a success at it, even if it's just being a dad and being a husband, taking everyone around to their activities. Forever a Canuck and forever a class act. Cory Schneider, thanks so much.
You got it, guys. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Sekeres Price from Wall Center and presentation Audi Downtown Vancouver.
Audi Downtown Vancouver has you covered for the next season. Yes, we are getting on to summer now, and it's time to put on that bike rack. Make sure that your back seats and cargo areas are ready for wet bathing suits and stuff. Get all of your accessories at Audi Downtown Vancouver or visit them at audidowntownvancouver.ca.
Would love to hear what you thought of that interview with Cory Schneider. You can text us 778-402-9680 to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips, your local Great Clips salon, is proudly Canadian owned and operated. Email us live at sekeresandprice.com. Before we unpack, give me a Bodog line of the day here, partner. I know you're looking at the Raptors and their playoff
so many
journey here.
Differing opinions on how far they may make it in the playoffs. If you're optimistic and say they lose in the conference final, the pays out a plus 440 at Bodog.
Bodog, your trusted source of free casino games, poker strategies, and sports odds. I had never heard the story about the CBA signing bonus rules for rookies.
Yeah.
Maybe facilitated him being a Vancouver Canuck. Boy, the way
fast-tracked it, maybe, yeah.
I mean, well, but he's got Jerry York at BC. Go and spend the fourth year, come be a free agent, right?
You never know.
You have to think those college coaches use that free agent as a dangling carrot. But I mean, even all these years later, it sounded like he didn't want to leave Boston College at the moment he did. I think we knew the answer as to why you're still playing at 36 in the AHL, but I love the fact that he didn't want to quit on himself. That he wasn't going down too soon on his own accord.
And it's the whole on my terms too. Like, you don't want the hips to make the decision for him.
Yeah.
You know, like I'll retire when I feel like I've wrung out the career here. So it's good on him to speak so positively about the AHL too. He's got no shame in playing professional hockey at the American Hockey League level. And I love the humanity that he brings to some of the decisions from his past, like that Game 6 decision. Like, we would all be nervous standing beside Luongo getting that news.
Oh, my God.
What about him? He was too. He was freaking out inside. Like, inside his belly's doing backflips because he just got told next to a future Hall of Famer, you're starting over him.
Can you imagine the chill that descended on that room when Alain said that? Because Alain was not a guy to sort of soft pedal, touchy-feely either, right? Like, as you heard Cory say, it was quick.
Yeah. And he enthusiastic when you said, do you remember? Oh, yeah.
Oh, I sure do. He said,
yeah.
Well, and I love the story, the deference he showed Louis, and then the mentorship that he got returned. I love the fact that Cory's always been a glass half full guy, right? Like, don't be sad for me. Because really he played his best hockey in Jersey when the team wasn't very good.
No.
And then by the time the team got like playoff good, that's when his body starts to break down on him. That's when the hips and joints start to go. So, but don't feel sad for him. And honestly, Blake, he sounded like the guy I remember coming up here as a fresh-faced Boston College kid.
Hey, we thought the world of this guy
you don't
throughout
have
his
a bad
career.
day if you're Cory Schneider.
No, we thought the world of this guy throughout his career, and it was only verified in that conversation. What a gem.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Enjoy your Easter. Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts and support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.